Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of Crue Trime. Crue Trime. If you are new here, hi. My name is Sarah, and what I do here is tell you a terrible story to ruin your day. Oh yeah, I'm gonna ruin it. And put on my makeup at the same time. So if that sounds like a fun combination to you, you're in the right place. So make sure that you subscribe so that you never miss an upload. We're going to every state in the United States to find these terrible stories. And today's story takes us to the home of the largest fireworks display in the United States. It's the only Union state capital to have been occupied by Confederate soldiers during the Civil War. It's also the location of the largest storage of gold, and I mean bourbon. It's Kentucky. So also this story actually spreads out into the neighboring state of Ohio, but since we've already covered so many of those cases from there, we're going to claim this one for the Bluegrass State. This is the story of a man named Brady. Just kidding. This is the story of Donald Harvey. I had originally planned to tell a different story for Kentucky, one that was recommended by a lovely viewer. Hi, Cameron. But there just wasn't enough to spread it out and give you guys a nice long video. So another time I'll do short videos. I don't know. We'll see. Donald Harvey was born on April 15th, 1952 to Goldie and Ray Harvey in Hamilton, Ohio. That's just north of Cincinnati, right on the border of Kentucky. Goldie and Ray later moved down to Kentucky to farm tobacco. Okay, so babies, when they're born, their heads they're not totally firmed up. You know what I mean? It typically takes about 1.5 years for everything to close. But Donald's fontanelle, or soft spot, right on the top of his head, never closed. When Donald was 6 months old, his father was holding him, and then they both fell asleep, which caused Donald to fall on the floor and hurt his head pretty badly. Another time, when he was about 5 years old, he suffered another bad head injury when he fell off of a moving truck. You guys gotta watch your kids better. Well, did these head injuries impact the rest of his life? I mean, he didn't really show any major signs of injury at the time, and there weren't any, ongoing behavioral issues as he was growing up, but, who knows? Donald was the oldest of 3 children and was raised in the tiny town of Boonville. Nope, Boonville. Everything in Kentucky that says "ville" is pronounced "vul," okay? Boonville. Donald's mother, Goldie, would later say that he was a very good kid, he never gave her any trouble. His teacher said that he was a good student, he was always well behaved, and he participated in class and got good grades. In an interview years later with Donald, he said that he excelled in school and then later in life by just being still and following the rules. When the kids were getting up and being rowdy in school, he just stayed in his seat. He carried this trait with him his whole life. The other students thought that he was just a quiet boy, not good or bad, just quiet. Also, starting at the very young age of 4, Donald was molested by his uncle and a neighbor. He was so little, he had no idea how to deal with it. His uncle just explained that this was something that boys just do, and also, don't ever tell your parents or I will kill them. Well, of course he believed it, Despite all that, as I mentioned, Donald got good grades in high school, but he grew bored and he dropped out after his 9th grade year. He eventually did get a GED through a correspondence school, and after leaving school, he worked in a factory for a short time in Cincinnati-ish. But then in 1970, he moved to be closer to his grandfather, who was in poor health and receiving care at a Catholic hospital in Kentucky. So Donald visited his grandpa every day at Marymount Hospital in London, Kentucky. And the nuns and the nurses really liked him and got to know him, so they ended up offering him a job. So the now 18-year-old Donald worked as a hospital orderly, and in his job, his duties included simple patient care, feeding and bathing, and emptying bedpans, and also administering medications and inserting catheters. Now, I went down a very weird rabbit hole about what kind of licensing is required for a person to insert catheters in people's pee holes. Turns out, none. Excuse me? I mean, I want to make it known right now, future me, whoever might be making my medical decisions, I'm going to need somebody experienced handling my pee hole. Thank you very much. Anyway, so Donnie is working at Marymount Hospital, and he goes into a room to check on an 88-year-old man who had recently suffered a stroke. And when Donnie lifted the sheet, the guy had a handful of poop and smeared it on Donnie's face. Bro. Well, Donald snapped. He grabbed a pillow and smothered the man to death. Then he cleaned up the poop mess, he got himself together, and alerted the nurses that the patient passed away. Well, since that man wasn't really expected to recover from that stroke, nobody questioned it. No autopsy was required. Nobody gave it a second thought. Donald was partly shocked and partly satisfied. So what did he do? He did it again. 3 weeks later, Donald went into an ailing woman's room, hospital room, and disconnected her oxygen, and she died. In Donald Harvey's view, what he was doing was merciful. He said that that woman had been praying for death.
The way he tells it, he was doing his victims a favor.
The patients may had a month to 6 months to live, and they were mostly put there just to die.
Even the poop guy wasn't gonna recover. He was just lying there. So Donald decided he was going to be the angel of death. You guys, this man confessed to killing many people like this. Like 50-ish. Probably more. So, firstly, if you know someone who was affected by Donald's crimes, I'm very sorry that that happened to your family or friend. And secondly, I hope you feel some justice now, especially knowing Donald's end, which we'll get to. So Donald's work in the hospital gave him access to very vulnerable people. And the ones that he decided weren't going to recover, he, in his words, terminated them. His methods varied and were thoughtfully selected to, best conceal his involvement and eliminate suspicion. In his first year at Marymount Hospital, he killed 15 people. He smothered people with pillows or plastic bags. He turned off oxygen tanks. He punctured catheters to induce infections. He overdosed people with morphine, which wasn't closely monitored in Kentucky at that time. In his second year, there's Donald just killing away, and he did much of the same to like 5 more people. Then, in 1971, Donald started drinking heavily. On March 31st, 1971, Donald was arrested for burglary. He was very drunk at the time of the arrest, and he was very talkative to the police officers, and he started telling them about killing all of these patients. Well, the police did investigate, but they found nothing to substantiate that drunken story, so they just closed the case. Donald's burglary charge was reduced to petty theft, and he just paid a fine and went on his way. But he did decide it was time to make a change in his life. So Donald decided to enlist in the United States Air Force. He did complete basic training and all of that, but less than a year after that, he was fired, I guess, and received a general discharge. And we learned in a recent story that a general discharge is normally issued after some kind of misconduct, but there isn't a confirmed record of why Donald was discharged. There's some conflicting stuff in the research. So some of it suggests that the Air Force found out about these burglary charges and like the maybe connections to killing people, and they didn't want anything to do with that, so they cut him loose. Other things in the research say that Donald was having like a nervous breakdown and had twice attempted suicide, and that was the reason for the discharge. Either way, when he came back in 1972, Donald was in a bad state, and he was admitted to the Cincinnati VA hospital to undergo electroshock therapy. I wonder how he got admitted to the VA hospital if he had a general discharge. The math ain't mathin'. Anyway, well, things weren't great. But Donald was trying to get himself back on track, and he began working as a part-time nurse's aide at Cardinal Hill Hospital in Lexington, Kentucky. The next year, he picked up a second job at Good Samaritan Hospital, where he did mostly like clerical work, The killing had stopped for a while. In September of 1975, Donald moved to Cincinnati, and he took a night shift patient care job at the VA hospital. Now, night shift meant not a lot of supervision and pretty much unlimited access to the whole hospital. Over the following 10 years or so, Donald got back to his mercy killing and broadened his methods of killing to include different kinds of poison, specifically arsenic, and disease vials. He pilfered the hospital over the years for cyanide and built up a 30-pound stash that he kept at home. He also studied medical journals for hints on how to hide the obvious signs of poisoning.
Cyanide on a black person will not show, but it'll show on a white person. If you give it in, give it by shot. If you put it in an IV, no. I use it in their feeding tubes.
Donald sprinkled rat poison in food, injected cyanide in IVs, stuffed plastic bags in mouths and nose holes, slipped poison into feeding tubes. I mean, you get it. In the early 1980s, Donald started bringing his work home. And I mean poisoning people outside of the hospital. His live-in boyfriend, Carl Howler, was apparently unfaithful in the relationship, or at least Donald believed he was. So Donald poisoned him with arsenic for over 3 years. He kept him just sick enough to stay home with him so he could take care of him, but, he wouldn't actually die. You guys have seen The Sixth Sense, right? Like the little girl who's sick, she's being poisoned by the stepmother. Like that. After some kind of disagreement with a female neighbor, Donald poured AIDS serum into her drink. Well, she somehow didn't contract AIDS or HIV, but she did contract hepatitis, which she nearly died from before getting diagnosed and receiving treatment. Another neighbor died after Donald laced one of her pies with arsenic. After some kind of spat or argument with Carl's family, Donald's boyfriend, he started poisoning Carl's parents and brother with arsenic too. When Carl's father ended up having a stroke, Donald visited him in the hospital and guess what? Poisoned his food. And he died. When Donald and Carl eventually broke up in 1984, Donald was so pissed off that he spent the next 2 years trying to for real poison Carl to death. But he somehow escaped. Meanwhile, back at the hospital, Donald was back to his murdering game, quietly racking up more victims. In July of 1985, Donald was fired from his job at the VA hospital because he brought a gun to work in his gym bag. Apparently, Donald was acting shifty, really shifty, because, he sees these people every day. So they pulled him aside and searched his bag, and that's how they found the gun, in addition to hypodermic needles, surgical scissors and gloves, medical texts, and other odd items. Well, okay, so he wasn't technically fired. They allowed him to resign instead, and nothing further came of it. All right, on February 24th, 1986, Donald landed a job at Cincinnati's Drake Hospital rehab post-acute care. Well, since he had resigned and not been fired, Drake Memorial had no idea about that weird gun incident. Well, Donald got down to business pretty much immediately, and over the next year or so, he murdered 20 people. At least. These people were smothered with plastic, overdosed with medications, oxygen tanks turned off, intentional infections, rat poison in feeding tubes, rat poisoning in actual food, cyanide in juice, cyanide injected into the body, lots of cyanide poisoning. That seemed to be Donald's favorite because is likely easier to conceal. On March 7th, 1987, James Powell died at Drake Memorial Hospital after suffering a traumatic motorcycle accident. I'll tell you, there are varying reports of how James Powell was progressing during his stay at Drake Hospital. Some accounts say that he was in a coma with no brain function, and the staff was told to keep him comfortable. But James Powell's family said that in the first days after the accident, he was definitely in a coma. But, then he came out of it and he started moving around, even wheeling himself down the hospital corridor. The big concern, however, was that he still had the trach tube in his throat so that he could breathe. The family just, considered that to be the next hurdle. His wife and 3 children visited him every day. And on March 6th, when they visited, they noticed that he was agitated and frustrated because he was trying to communicate, but you can't speak with that in your throat. Ooh, also one little nugget that I haven't mentioned yet. Donald liked to tell people that he was going to kill them, either while he was doing it or in advance. Well, they never found out what he was trying to tell them because the next day, he was dead. Well, since James Powell was admitted due to a motorcycle accident and not some other kind of known disease or condition, his death required autopsy, so that they could determine the cause. Well, as soon as the medical examiner opened him up, he smelled almonds, the telltale sign of cyanide poisoning. Side note, I didn't know that being able to smell the almond smell of cyanide isn't something that everybody can do. So it's like people who can't smell asparagus pea. I mean, it's really a thing. I guess it has something to do with your genetic smell receptors. Well, I must have some superhuman smell receptors because I smell everything. I really should have been a sommelier or like a perfumier. Is that a thing? Okay, well, as soon as James Powell's death was ruled a homicide, the police were notified. They started investigating right away, and they started with the most likely and obvious, the family. Well, the family was stunned, James Powell did not have any enemies, nobody that would ever want to hurt him. So once the family was cleared, the investigation moved to the hospital staff. So everybody that worked at Drake Memorial Hospital and on that floor in particular was interviewed. All of the nurses took polygraph tests and passed, but guess who refused the polygraph test? I mean, I would refuse the polygraph test. Never take those. Anyways, he instead opted for an interview. Donald. We're talking about Donald. To the investigator's surprise, Donald Harvey confessed. He put cyanide in James's... Hey! I'm filming over here. Cats are fighting. Murray. That's not nice. Where was I? James confessed. Well, James confessed. He put cyanide in James's gastro tube to put him out of his misery. Euthanasia. Well, after Donald's arrest, the nurses started talking, saying that for years they had suspected that Donald was killing people, but they were ordered by the hospital to keep quiet. The nurses were so afraid of what Donald could have been up to in hospitals for the last 20 years that, they knew there had to be more victims. Well, they secretly reached out to local news anchor Pat Menarson to get to the bottom of it. The local Cincinnati news station aired a 30-minute expose on Donald Harvey, including what appeared to be a police and hospital cover-up.
Our investigation reveals that these deaths occurred in the space of roughly 1 year. They're deaths that outside experts we've consulted believe could have been deliberate killings. The toll may run as high as 23.
There was also a verifiable spike in deaths during Donald's tenure at the hospital. Well, Donald was in jail awaiting trial at this time, but the full scope of his real murder spree just wasn't known. So after watching this media coverage on his client, attorney Billy Whalen, Donald's attorney, went to go see him in jail. In order for him to best represent him, he needs to know the full scope of what he's dealing with, right? So he asked Donald. Billy asked Donald if he had killed more than one person. And to his surprise, Donald said, yeah. Well, Billy asked, well, how many? And Donald said, well, I can't tell you. And he's like, what do you mean you can't tell me? Like, you need to tell me the truth. I need to understand what we're dealing with. He's like, well, I can't tell you because I can only estimate. So Billy said, well, give me a number that it can't be more than. And Donald said, 70. With that little nugget, Billy got busy on a plea agreement for his client in exchange for a life sentence, like taking the death penalty off the table. Donald would offer a full confession. So Donald's confession interview lasted 15 hours, and he had close to perfect, if not perfect, recall. He remembered every person's name, age, what they looked like, what hospital room and bed number they were in, the date that he killed them, and the method that was used. He also revealed that he kept a detailed list of all the victims. He told the police that they could find this list hanging behind a picture on the wall in his house, and they retrieved it, and it matched everything that he told them.
Did you consider them victims, by the way? The patients?
No, I don't consider them. They were my patients. I never looked at it as murder till I was actually arrested. I always looked at it as mercy.
In the end, Donald Harvey confessed to upwards of 70 murders, but they could only corroborate 37 of them, so that's all they could charge him with. I mean, only 37. So Donald pled guilty to 37 murders that spanned across 2 states, 3 different counties. There was not a trial, of course, because he pled guilty, but there was a sentencing phase, and he ended up receiving 28 life sentences, with the first opportunity for parole being in the year 2047 when he is 95 years old.
Do you consider yourself a sociopath?
That's what most people consider me.
What do you think?
I have been rehabilitated. I'm ready to go back to the streets.
Much of Donald's time has been served at the Toledo Correctional Institution in Toledo, Ohio, where my family's from. What up, Glass City? On March 28th, 2017, Donald was found severely beaten in his cell, and he died of those injuries 2 days later, just shy of his 65th birthday. And that is the story of Donald Harvey. If you're interested to know any of the makeup that I used to put this look together, just check down in the description box because everything is linked. In addition is some fun links to coupon codes and the merch store. Don't forget about merch. There's also links to other Crue Trime channels if you're interested to see more of this kind of thing. Also, I'm always taking recommendations for Crue Trime stories, so you could leave it wherever you want. It's easiest for you, Twitter, Instagram, in the comments here, or there's actually a link in the description box to a Google Doc that will collect all that information. Thank you so much for hanging out today and for watching this video. I really appreciate it. If you want to see more content like this, then make sure you subscribe to this channel before you leave today. I upload new videos here on YouTube every week, and you can follow me on the other socials as well. That is it for now. I will catch you next time in the next video. Bye! So, they reached out to, oh my god, the fucking cats. Murray! Donald could have been doing... Come on. Knock it off. Tyler! Tyler!
Oh my god, what?
Come break up the cats. They're fighting and ruining my video.
Holy shit.
Exactly. They're getting along great. By the way. Thank you. They're down your fucking fisticuffs. You didn't hear it?
No, I have my headphones on.
Oh. Okay, thank you.
Hey. Come on, break it up. Idiots.
Okay, so one more time.